Hi there, this is Abby Rodriguez from the Assistive Technology team at D181. What I want to do today is walk you through some of the early troubleshooting steps you can take if your iPad or a student iPad is not functioning the way you want it to. A lot of times teams contact me about the volume not working on a student's AAC device. What I want to do this morning is walk you through some of the initial steps you can try on your own if Randy or myself is unavailable to come assist you. A couple of notes before I get started, as I usually do. I am projecting from my iPad onto my laptop for the sake of this recording, so you'll see areas of the screen that you don't normally see. Also, if I'm running on a different software version than you are, you might see things that are slightly different. But the way that you work through these troubleshooting steps, it should be fairly similar. The first thing I want to explain or show you, and the first step that I typically talk to teams about, is making sure you have updated the app that you're working with. If an app is not functioning the way you want it to function, one of your first steps is going to be to check to see if it needs an update. And the way that you can update apps is in the App Store here. You'll see on my device I have a badge that says 2. So that means I have 2 apps that are ready for updates, that have updates available from their developers. So I'm just going to click on the App Store, and you'll see down here I'm in the Updates tab. If you're on a different tab, you won't see that yet, but you'll click on the Updates tab down here, and then it'll show the 2 that I have to update, and I can simply click on Update. It may prompt me for my Apple ID and my password. It may not. It depends on how that's set in the settings. And so you'll need that information for the device that you're working on. We do have a new system in place for some of our iPads that requires no Apple ID. And the way that the updates work for that may be different. So that's how you do app updates. I also urge teams to check to see if there's a software update. This is put out by Apple every so often. They make little bug fixes or changes. And the way to access a software update is through the settings. You'll go into settings on the device, and you'll go into general. I'm already in there, but you'll go into general. And up top here, you see software update. And mine is actually due for a software update. Now, smaller updates can take as little as 2 to 5 minutes. Larger updates can take as much as a half hour. It really depends on how much information there is and how good your Wi-Fi connection is. So keep that in mind if you are going to run a software update, that it might take a little time. Also keep in mind, I recommend that you plug in the device while it's running a software update. Sometimes it won't run all the way through if it doesn't have enough power. I'm not going to run this update now because I don't know how long this one is going to take, but that's another step to ensure that your iPad is working smoothly. All right, so the example I gave you was working with the volume settings. Sometimes when students are using touch chat, I get emails from teams that the volume isn't working, the voices aren't working. And the volume can be addressed in several places. If you go back into settings and you go into sounds, you can check your volume here. And you can see I have mine cranked all the way up. So that's one area you can double check. You can also double check by accessing the control panel. The control panel is accessed by swiping upward on the iPad from the bottom. And it can be a little tricky to get. But you swipe with one finger up from the very bottom and you get this control panel. And in this control panel, you'll also see a slider for volume here. And you'll also see a mute button. If the mute button is on, the voice won't work. If the volume is all the way down, the voice won't work. So that's another area to check. One last thing is actually on the exterior of the iPad, check the slider that's on the outside. Sometimes that slider can be associated with muting. Another thing I always suggest to teams is to restart an application. When you go into an application and when you press the home button and go back out, you're not actually closing the application. You're just sort of minimizing it, so to speak. To actually close the application and restart it, you need to double-click the home button. Double-click the home button, 1, 2. And you'll see all the apps that you have open. All right? I don't have very many, but I open TouchChat. So TouchChat is open. It shows it in this smaller kind of window. In order to truly close the application, you take that smaller window and you swipe and flick upward, and then it's truly closed. So then when I go back into TouchChat, you'll see it's kind of restarted itself. Okay? So that's another suggestion I always make to I tell teams is to go ahead and restart the application. A couple other things to check if we're talking about volume issues is in settings, check your Wi-Fi. See if your Wi-Fi is working. Sometimes that can impact how updates run or how other things run. If you need a Wi-Fi password, contact your tech person or Randy or myself, or several of the MRC directors know the Wi-Fi password. Also, check your Bluetooth connection. Some of the iPads use Bluetooth to connect to other things. Sometimes that can impact how the volume works. You can turn it on or off and see if that makes a difference. Those are two other things you can check really quickly that can have an impact with how an iPad performs. And one of the last recommendations I'll make is to completely power down the iPad. When you press the sleep button and tap it, you're just merely putting it to sleep. You're not actually turning it all the way off. In order to turn it all the way off, you need to take that power button and you need to press and hold it. So right here on my iPad, you'll see the power sleep wake button. If I simply tap it, it just puts the iPad to sleep. It's not actually all the way off. See, I just press the home button, swipe, and it's back on. To actually power down, I need to press and hold this button on the outside here. And it's a little bit tricky when it has a case on here, so let's see if I can do it. So I got this little slider. It might be red on yours. And that's how I power it all the way off. And you may get a little spinning wheel that shows shutting all the way down. Give it a minute, leave it off, and then you can power it back on. So then I'm going to have to press and hold the power button to get it to come back on, and that Apple shows me that it was all the way off and now it's coming all the way back on. Those are my recommendations for initial troubleshooting steps, particularly when they come up with volume. If you've worked your way through these initial troubleshooting steps and you still can't get the iPad to work the way you want it to, please go ahead and contact one of our team members. Thanks.